Welcome one, welcome all to another show here tonight. I am John Kurtz. What a weekend of college football. Obviously, I'm here in Big 12 country. The Big 12 weekend with BYU going down, Arizona State firmly announcing its presence as now a Big 12 contender, and Colorado continuing to look like the best team in the Big 12. We've got a lot to talk about. And unfortunately, for the Big 12's sake at large and ACC, you are not abstained from this either. There are nightmare scenarios that could play out for both leagues. If you thought this college football playoff, the new playoff every single year, was just going to be the same deal and the four power conference champions would get in easily and get the buys, my friends, that is not how this is playing out. That is not, well, at least it may not be that smooth of a ride to get there for the ACC and the Big 12. And we definitely need to talk about all of that today. The Big 12's dreams and the ACC's dreams, really, of getting two teams in the college football playoff appear to be essentially dead here at this point. That is one thing you can definitely, I think, celebrate with the, celebrate, not really the word there. Mourn. There we go. You can mourn the death of a multi-bid ACC or Big 12, basically, at this point. Certainly for the Big 12 as BYU goes down to Kansas. And frankly, K-State losing to Arizona State because of the Wildcats being at 16 in the college football playoff rankings last week. Maybe had an outside chance there, but no longer. So that's where we are, man. It was crazy. Honestly, the BYU game felt very, very similar to every BYU game so far this year and every Kansas game so far this year. It was just that the outcome flipped. And that now is going to send a lot of shockwaves throughout the rest of the league and how it affects the league when it comes to the playoff. I do want to spend some time on Kenny Dillingham, man. Maybe it was just because I saw it up close and in person from the press box at Bill Snyder Family Stadium, but he already had my attention. That, just like smacks you in the face with attention. Is this the guy? Like, should we be asking the question, is Arizona State the team that is going to now take over the reins of the new Big 12? Do they have a chance to do that? Because Kenny Dillingham has done that after inheriting a program that was a mess and doing just a hell of a job with a roster that is not properly NIL funded right now. So what happens if he starts getting the resources from Arizona State moving forward? There is a lot. There is a lot to digest as far as that goes. And we even have an important TV update when it comes to the Big 12. I think another great move by Brett Yormark. We have something really, really big potentially coming down the pipe for the Big 12 as far as that goes. So a lot going on tonight, a lot to get to. If you've been here before, you know the deal. If you are already here, continue the chats, keep those coming. I appreciate everybody that's been in the chat already, anxiously, eagerly awaiting the start of the show tonight. But beyond just that, if you want to guarantee that your question or comment makes it on the show tonight, you can click the $ below the chat box in order to do that. Click the $ below the chat box. It will make it a super chat, which attaches a donation to your chat and ensures that you make it on the show tonight. Genuinely appreciate everybody who does that. Also, if you are not watching live and you still want to be a part of the show, you can do so via Venmo. You just go to John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo to leave a donation there and then drop your question or comment there, and I will kick off the next show with it. And that is where Clint comes in here. I appreciate you, Clint. Great to hear from you again. Clint says, it's been a long time. Love your commentary every week. I subscribe to the newsletter with my home and work email. Now that is getting it done, Clint. BYU's defense played like Big 12 champions. Unfortunately, the offense pooped the bed. Yeah, it's pretty well said, Clint. I can't really argue with you on that one. BYU's offense was not nearly good enough. Not nearly good enough in that game. And frankly, I think I'll get into it a little bit more in a second, Clint. But it was really the two drives that bookended halftime that were the death knell of BYU in what was a pretty low possession game, right? That was another part of this very low possession game with BYU and Kansas. So those errors in execution there to only come away with 3 points, they're heightened even more because you just were not going to have very many opportunities to get back there. So anyway, I'm going to take a quick peek here. I appreciate you, Clint, by the way. Thank you. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo again there. And hey, if you want to subscribe to the Big 12 newsletter, like Clint just mentioned, he does. Make sure that you do that. I'll take all the emails you got, but you don't have to be like Clint. Just get it straight to your inbox. Big 12 news, no SEC or Big 10 bias. You're not going to have to cut through any of that crap. I'm just going to give you what matters to the Big 12 straight to your inbox 3 times a week. OFBnews.com is how you subscribe. OFBnews.com. Get subscribed to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. You can also just click the link in the description of this video to get signed up. That is another way to do that as well. Okay, so we are off and rolling, and I've got to start here with just, cannibalization happening in the Big 12 and the ACC. This channel always is going to come at this from a non-Power 2 perspective. So what does this mean really for the Big 12 and the ACC? And I'll start with the Big 12 here. I mean, to be completely honest, there is not much of a way that you could look at this and say that things worked out very well for the league at large. If you're a Kansas fan, it's great. If you're an Arizona State fan, it's great. And I think that is a tremendous story. And it's kind of hard not to catch yourself like rooting for Kenny Dillingham, at least if you're me. I love everything about that guy's demeanor. But it was not really a great week because BYU now falls from the ranks of the unbeaten. That takes away what was going to be the easiest path to get 2 teams into the college football playoff. It seemed like the next best path, which was not going to be very good heading into the week, was if K-State, who was already ranked 16th in the college football playoff rankings, could win out, perhaps that would be one way if there was some carnage in front of them, like a Notre Dame losing, something like that. But instead, we're going from talking about 2-team scenarios, which has kind of been the theme of the last few weeks. You know, how do you make that happen? No longer is it a 2-team scenario. It is, oh boy, is there a 0-team scenario here? Is it possible that the Big 12 could wind up with a 0-team scenario here, or the ACC? That possibility does exist. I think it is very small, but that possibility does exist. And probably the more realistic thing to be talking about is, can you make sure that the Big 12 and or ACC champion finishes ahead of Boise State so that you still get one of the buys? And it's crazy how much the conversation has changed and how much one outcome of one game or 2 outcomes of 2 games can really do that to you. But that is what's happening. Both leagues are really beating each other up. Now, so is the SEC, by the way. I would mention that. Georgia beats Tennessee. So now you've just got this big smattering of SEC teams that have 2 losses. So as I said in a video, maybe like a month ago, you can go find it on the channel, that the SEC and the Big 10, or the Big 12 rather, are basically the same channel. The SEC's got a much better PR guy, but they're basically the same conference. I'm sorry. They're basically the same conference because you just have a bunch of teams that are kind of beating each other up, and it doesn't look like there are any truly great teams there. That's really the theme just across college football this year, which should make for a really exciting playoff. Unfortunately, it would have been a great year for the Big 12 to really have one truly dominant, great team that could try to go run through that. Maybe Colorado is evolving into that. Maybe. We will see. I certainly think Colorado is playing like the best team in the league right now. And that's part of why we saw BYU's luck run out. That's really how that felt, man. At least I thought so. It felt like it was a luck run out situation for the Cougars. If you keep playing with fire, you're going to get burned. That's an adage basically as old as time, and it's what happened to BYU here. Played with fire against Oklahoma State, a team that is still winless in the Big 12. and you didn't quite get beat. But then you play with fire again last week at Utah. And a holding call, I wouldn't say bailed you out, because it does, as was plentifully discussed last week. It does look like that was a hold, or at very, very best, from Utah's perspective, like a 50-50 call. But you got a call that helps you late in a game, and you drive down and you still win. That was a game in which, BYU's offense didn't get it done nearly enough. Ever since the middle of the UCF game, the BYU's offense has been very anemic, very, very anemic. And that trend continued. And so against Utah, you almost got burned with it. This time you don't score enough against Kansas. You get 13 points. It's not going to be enough. This time you got burned. Kept touching the stove, kept hurting, but this time you really, truly hurt yourself. So was it a fluky play that kind of like flipped things in this game? For sure. I mean, Kansas basically, let me see if I can get this camera refocused for you guys. Sorry. Basically, a fluky play wins the game. You have the little quick kick from Jalen Daniels. It hits somebody in the helmet, and it turns into the game-winning touchdown for the Jayhawks. Is that a fluky play in and of itself? Yes, absolutely it is. I would not deny that really for a second. But I can't have a whole heck of a lot of sympathy when, again, you should have learned this lesson before. You can't be messing around with these teams that are below you in the Big 12 standings. I'm not going to call Kansas a bad team, because they are absolutely not at all right now. But you can't keep messing around with teams like that and expect to be able to pull it out of the fire every week. And it didn't happen. Finally, that stopped, and you weren't able to do it. Lots of reasons why, lots of frustrations. I hate the speed option call on 3rd and 6, right? Or 3rd and goal. Was it like 3rd and goal from the 6? Anyway, the 3rd down call for BYU there, where they run speed option at the end of the game. I did not like that in any way, shape, or form. I definitely didn't like the interception thrown into the end zone right at the end of the first half. That was a total backbreaker. I'm not really like a huge fan of just the lob it up in that sort of situation around the goal line. People really hate the goal line fade. I'm not the biggest fan in the world of it, except in very specific situations. I really wasn't there. But it is what it is, especially with, and like, nothing against Jake Retzlaff. He's been a phenomenal story and obviously a much better quarterback than most people expected this year. But man, that's not the type of guy that I would really want to be throwing the one-on-one ball to in the end zone in such a clutch situation like that. So I don't know. You can always go back and relitigate a lot of these things. But if I were a BYU fan, I would leave feeling pretty frustrated by that. But it was really about red zone chances and not converting. 4 trips into the red zone, 6 total points for BYU in the game. You have to be better than that. And you're not going to beat good teams, of which Kansas definitely qualifies for right now. You're not going to beat good teams if you are consistently doing that. BYU is going to have to figure out something with that offense if they want to win the Big 12. Right, because that's the conversation here right now. This loss in and of itself to BYU, it definitely hurt the conference, and it would have been nice for BYU in a lot of ways. Maybe you can argue, even if BYU were to win out, this could put in jeopardy a first-round bye. I still don't think it would. I think they would finish in front of Boise if they won out the rest of the way, ran the table, beat Arizona State, beat like a Colorado in the Big 12 title game. But it didn't do all that much damage to BYU's ultimate goals here if they are to get to the playoff and win a Big 12 championship. You still just got to go out there, win your games. You will be totally okay. It hurt the conference. But if the real conversation here about BYU is, can they actually perform well enough? Like, have we seen them throttle down too much to be able to actually win the Big 12? I think that's the conversation. I was starting to have this last week when I brought up the topic, like, is Colorado the best team in the league right now? Hell, I mean, is Arizona State the best team in the league right now? But really, I think Colorado is playing so well with their offense and their defense. It wasn't perfect against Utah, but it certainly is a top half of the league defense. And when you pair that with as elite as that offense is, it's a pretty difficult combo to beat. And we're seeing that. And Colorado seems to be getting better and peaking toward the end of the year here. And it does not feel like that for BYU. It feels like BYU perhaps peaked like around that UCF game and now is starting to tail off a little bit. So that is my question about the Cougars right now. And I think what you would really have to ask yourself. So that's where we stand as far as why that hurts the league, right? BYU loses for all the reasons we just discussed. It greatly devalues any chance you would have of being a multi-bid league. And the ACC, with the loss of Miami, with Clemson losing a couple of games, it was good for the ACC that SMU found a way to win when they were getting really pushed by Boston College there. But the ACC is still very much in jeopardy of this same scenario here. Can somebody get left out of the playoff? It is possible. I don't think it's likely, but it is possible. And the drumbeat started on this a little bit late last week, where I started to see people bringing up this possibility like, hey, should we be talking about this more? Like, could the Big 12 actually get left out? And maybe even the ACC get left out of this thing? Because everybody just assumes that the Power Four conference champions are going to be fine. Like, I literally had not heard this scenario talked about basically at all until this past week. But it is technically possible. Rules of the college football playoff stipulate the top 5 conference champions are going to get in. The top 4 are going to get buys. It's not, hey, the top power conference champions are going to get in. It's just, it leaves it open-ended. So if there are a group of 5 teams playing well enough, you definitely could be in trouble. Well, right now, Boise is number 12 in the AP. They're number 13 in the college football playoff rankings. So they might move up a spot or two. We shall see. Boise was not, by the way, particularly impressive. I would say over the weekend, they were down 14-0 to San Jose State, but they did come back and win. They continue to win games. They've got the I think BYU fans know full well about now. They've got a quality loss. Boy, does Boise State have a quality loss that people love, losing to Oregon. And because of that, they are in the top 15. Now, Boise's remaining schedule, they're at Wyoming. They've got Oregon State. Those are both games that, like, ESPN's FPI has them at a 95%-ish win probability on. So they will probably win that. It's not going to do them anything in terms of credibility. Then they'll play a Mountain West title game against Colorado State or UNLV. They've already beaten UNLV. If they were to play them again, they have not played Colorado State this year. So if they win out, you're at least going to have a conversation here and sweat it out a bit for the Big 12 as to whether or not you would get a bye. Because if Boise wins out, then they stay in that range. You're going to your champion will have to be ranked higher than them in order to actually get a first round bye there. But the big wild card here really is Army. I suppose maybe you could float Tulane here, but Army, because they have Notre Dame on their schedule. So Tulane's another G5 team that's right behind them in the polls, but Tulane does not have the upward mobility of Army because Army is going to play Notre Dame this week. Army is the threat. Army is the threat here. So Army, number 24 in the playoff rankings, number 18 in the AP poll. Tulane is just a spot and then 2 spots respectively behind them. If Army were to win out, which would mean winning the American title as well as beating Notre Dame, that can be a problem for the Big 12. But I will say, here is a part of the problem because I'm seeing this a lot in the chat. I'm going to go, and I see you guys with the super chats. I will get there in just a moment. But I see Keep Chopping really pushing this. Army just needs to win and the Big 12 is out. Keep Chopping, I regret to inform you, if that happens and Army beats Notre Dame and Army wins out, and BYU or Colorado, one of those 2 teams wins out from here, then that will absolutely not happen. Army is not going to be jumping Colorado or BYU in that scenario. What would have to happen is that Army wins out, and then the Big 12 has a real disaster scenario of itself on its hands where you have a 3-loss team win the league, which could happen if there is enough chaos. And we're staring down this week being what will probably tell us the answer to that, because you've got a difficult game for Colorado against Kansas, which the early line on that was like 1.5, Colorado minus 1.5 at Arrowhead. And then you've got BYU going on the road as an underdog, rightfully so, in my opinion, right now at Arizona State. So it's not that it can't happen, but those things would have to happen. So pushing a narrative that, hey, all Army has to do is win out, which, by the way, includes beating Notre Dame, right? So, flippantly throwing that out there like that is something that is likely to happen is not the accurate way to be doing that. But it would also take the Big 12 bringing too much chaos upon itself as well. So you could have 2 conference champions potentially if you get a chaos Big 12 scenario, if it's 3-loss Iowa State, 3-loss K-State somehow, whoever it's going to be from that group, and they win the Big 12, then you could see that team not being ranked as high as an Army that continues to win and has a win over Notre Dame in its back pocket. That would be your nightmare scenario. Again, with Tulane, I put them out there, but I don't think that Tulane has the upward mobility that would get everybody's attention enough to boost them up the polls. The Big 12 is fortunate in that regard, especially with how well Tulane is playing right now, that Tulane did not beat K-State, which came down to the last possession of the game, or did not beat Oklahoma, which came down to late in the fourth quarter. They were right there with a chance to win in Norman. So those games, you flip one of those, and suddenly Tulane would be a much, much bigger threat here. So again, I think if BYU wins out and wins the Big 12 championship, you're obviously not going to have any sort of issue here. On the other hand, if Colorado wins out, don't think you're going to have any sort of issue here. Colorado number 17 in the playoff rankings last week. If you want to say Colorado wins out, would they jump Boise? We can have that conversation. I think they would, though, because that would include another couple of wins here where they'll probably start inching their way up a bit. And then you would presume that it would be a decent quality win that they would have in the Big 12 championship game. So I'm not too worried about either of those scenarios. The problem will be if you're going to get a loss for Colorado, you're going to get a loss for BYU, and that throws everything into a little bit of chaos as far as who's making the Big 12 title game, and you somehow have a 3-loss Big 12 team winning it, which is definitely still possible. Definitely still possible. That would be the scenario that's not good. Included in that, I did see like Max Olson tweeted out, I believe with ESPN now, formerly of The Athletic, Max Olson tweeted out like that there is a scenario out there that would involve K-State and Baylor meeting for the Big 12 championship in like an 8-way tie. So there is still craziness that is out there, if you can believe it. There's also the ACC here. So the ACC, if you have 3-loss SMU, for instance, winning the ACC title, that could be problematic. That would require a loss coming up for SMU, which I don't foresee as overly likely, but they play teams that are plucky enough. It's Virginia and Cal. I mean, you could ask Miami about just how difficult it can be to make sure that you handle Cal. They probably should have lost that game. And then if that had happened, the ACC would be in real trouble right now. Then you could be looking at what happens if just Miami makes it through and then beats SMU in the conference championship game. And you've got all these teams with 2 losses. Probably not being jumped by any sort of Army scenario there if you're the ACC, but certainly in danger of losing your auto bye in that first round. Miami also has to go play at Syracuse in the regular season finale. And like Syracuse all of a sudden is 7-3. That becomes a difficult spot for a Miami team that has struggled with almost anybody with a pulse in the ACC and has done a bit of a BYU act of their own throughout the year. So those are ways the ACC could start to get in trouble too if you have Miami and SMU picking up losses before this Big 12 or rather ACC championship game. So that's kind of the rundown right now. It's kind of the rundown. And what it means for the Big 12 moving forward is Kansas could just ruin everything. Where was I saw the comment earlier from a Kansas fan here that Kansas is just coming to mess everything up. Kansas is coming to just Charlie Brown the entire league here, pull the football out at the last moment. Kansas might be having the weirdest season I can remember out of a Power 5 football team yet, because they were a 2.5 point underdog on the road at unbeaten BYU as a 3-6 team. And now Colorado, who's playing like the best team in the league, top 20 team in the country, Colorado is now going to be a 1.5 point favorite going on the road to play Kansas here as a 4-6 team. But that's because Kansas has that level of talent and they're playing that well right now. The defense did a really nice job. I mean, Kansas's offense is really what's been propelling a lot of that. They just crushed Iowa State, went up and down the field on them. BYU's defense held them down, which was an admirable job. But they get one break. Like Kansas hangs around. They get one break with the weird muff punt situation, and they score, win the game. So they've already put the nail in the coffin on the Iowa State at-large bid campaign, I would say, with the loss that they handed to them last week. Now they've ended the BYU unbeaten regular season. They can go and beat Colorado, and Colorado a crucial third loss before the Big 12 championship game, and just throw all of this into even more craziness for the Big 12. I'm seeing the question here, like what? And there we go. Some teams just want to watch the world burn. Yes. Town Hawk. That's pretty good, because that's basically what it is right now for Kansas. Just trying to watch the world burn. That's funny. But yeah, I mean, someone asked, where was Kansas earlier this year? In every single game, and look at it in retrospect. Like, K-State, if Kansas just doesn't have a guy catch a punt and fall, or catch a kickoff and fall out of bounds at the 1 yard line, which turned into a safety, they're winning that game in Manhattan, right? It's just one special teams gaffe away from winning that game in Manhattan. Kenny Dillingham in Arizona State, who I'm going to talk extensively about later. Look at the way that they're playing right now. Kansas was up. Jalen Daniels threw a clutch touchdown pass late in that game with like 2 minutes to go. It was a very late TD pass to go in front, and then the defense coughed it up, and they lost a close one at Arizona State. But that now looks like a really impressive effort. They had, of the 6 losses, they had the lead in the fourth quarter in 5 of them. The other one, they were down by 1 against TCU. They were there. They were close. But I think Jalen Daniels was working out some kinks. The offensive coordinator, Jeff Grimes, new OC this year, I think they were working out some kinks. And it just took a little while for that to gel, and they lost a bunch of close games. Illinois, they were on the road at Illinois in another game that they were right there and could have won. UNLV, who turned out to be a pretty good G5 team, had a big lead and kind of let that slip away. So that's the Kansas resume. They are much, much better. Do not be fooled. Do not be fooled by the Jayhawks. That is a good team with a lot of talent, and now Jalen Daniels seems locked in. Everything seems to be clicking for them. It will still be difficult because Kansas is going to have to beat Colorado and then Baylor to go bowling. And Baylor, I don't know if I saw R. Webb was in here earlier. I mean, he said sick 'em, and sick 'em indeed. Like Baylor's playing some really good football. And if Baylor just knocks down a Hail Mary at Colorado, they are right in the thick of the Big 12 championship race right now. And how different would everything be feeling right now? Because that would affect where Colorado is at, and the Buffs standing in this. It would be even more wide open and crazy right now had Baylor just knocked down one Hail Mary. So really what you have is the Big 12 has just become completely wild, completely wild, like everybody thought it would be. And the feelings that we had like 3 weeks ago, where you're like, man, all right, Iowa State in this thing, BYU in this thing, K-State still hanging around with just one loss. This could be a really strong year with some teams at the top. Nope, it has turned into the total wild, chaotic conference that everybody really kind of prognosticated it would be. All right, appreciate you guys with the super chats. Let's hit those now. If you would like to contribute here and make sure that your question or comment makes the show tonight, click the $ below the chat box in order to do so. Here is Daniel. Appreciate you, Daniel. Cat fan in Huskerland, a.k.a. Daniel Osborne. Daniel says, congrats to Kansas and Arizona State on great victories. What happened to our field goal unit? Oh, boy. Well, talked a lot about it on the Three-Maw postgame show live from Bill Snyder Family Stadium yesterday, but K-State's now two long snappers, both botched, two different long snappers, botched snaps that caused K-State field goal misses that actually turned out to be pretty crucial in that game. This is after K-State had two bad snaps on kicking attempts at Houston in the previous game. So the long snappers have the yips is the long and short of it. And that is not good. Very frustrating. The weekend wasn't a total loss for Daniel. He saw the volleyball team take down number 18 TCU in 3 straight sets. All right, there you go. Women's basketball had a nice performance against Creighton. Good to point those things out because everything else was awful. Worst K-State men's basketball performance I've seen in a long time on Thursday against LSU, followed up by worst K-State football performance I've seen in a while in the game against Arizona State, falling behind 24-0. So not a banner week at K-State, but Daniel, I'm glad that you still found some enjoyment out of it. Eddie, what's up, Eddie? Thank you for being here, Eddie. Eddie Lozano, San Antonio Real Estate. You guys know the drill. If you need a real estate agent in San Antonio, make sure that you talk to my guy, Eddie. Eddie says, hi, buddy. K-State forgot how to catch and run, how to tackle. They definitely, a lot of drops. There was a fumble. I think there are big problems with the offensive coordinator at this point. Feels like K-State kind of got figured out midway through the season, and there's been no real counter from the offense. Avery Johnson development is stagnated. Yeah, not good. Not good. BYU, what can I say? The ball bounced the other way. It did, but it wouldn't have mattered had BYU capitalized more on those 4 red zone trips and gotten more than just the 6 points. I do think that, to me, is the real key stat from that game. But Eddie says, congrats to Iowa State, Baylor, Colorado, Arizona State. Great game. I have more gray hair today. All right, Eddie. Thank you for your contribution as well. Thank you for being here. Appreciate that immensely. Yes, Arizona. Let's mention that too. Arizona gets the win on Friday night over Houston. Big one for Brent Brennan, who's been under a ton of fire there. Obviously, a pretty disastrous season for Arizona, but to hold Houston to 3 points, a Houston team that had won 3 of 4 and really just crushed them, that's a pretty big result. So impressive. Rise and shout, big BYU fan. I fear you're correct. BYU is throttling down. It feels like that. Now you can turn it around. You can figure something out, hit another gear and go. But in a way, it kind of reminds me, rise and shout, a little bit of 2012 K-State. So 2012 K-State, about this time in the season, was ranked number 1 in the BCS rankings. Unbeaten, Colin Klein. And Klein had started to get really beat up. They lost Ty Zimmerman, an all Big 12 safety, to an injury. They were starting to get really beat up, and they went to Waco. They went to Waco late in the year with 2 games left in the season. And it felt like they had just kind of been backsliding a little bit. It had not showed up yet in the win-loss column, but it felt like they had been losing some steam, and then they went and just got whacked in Waco and lost that game. And that just felt like the culmination of kind of trending that way. I feel like there's a bit of that vibe from this BYU team right now, where they may be running out of some steam. If they win at Arizona State this weekend, you got to be right back to feeling pretty good. You'll close with Houston, which is certainly losable, and BYU has played to a level that is definitely losable at points this year against Houston, but you would feel a ton better because that would be a monster win with what Arizona State is right now. Ag List. What's up, Alan? Alan says, John, thanks to Daniel Osborne. Sorry for your cats. Thought Avery would bring K-State back in the second half. Faith in Lance Leipold reaffirmed. It should be. I saw that was the first top 10 road win for Kansas in 30 years. Colorado going down next. Oh boy, we've got confidence from Alan. Confidence from the Jayhawks. I'm seeing a lot of that from the Kansas fan base, frankly. Worried about Baylor. Got to go to a bowl. A bowl game would be a huge accomplishment. Really, and I know no one really wants to hear that in this day and age in college football, and Kansas started with preseason expectations of making the playoff. But if you got to a bowl game and had the season turn around from like where it was and won out by beating BYU, Colorado, and Baylor, what you said, Alan, is correct. Reaffirms your faith in Lance Leipold and the direction of the program. In a year where you're going to take huge personnel losses, there will be major personnel losses for the Kansas program after this year. That would have to make you feel a ton better. And they still could bring Jalen Daniels back next year. Maybe that happens, and maybe him playing better and things working out toward the end of this year will be more of an influence on that actually coming to fruition. So I think there's a lot of good that can still come from this Kansas season the rest of the year, and you could be feeling a ton better about it than you were just a couple of weeks ago. So I agree with you, Alan. I think it is still pretty significant. All right, if you guys want to join the show, you want to make sure your question or comment makes it onto the show, click the $ below the chat box in order to do so. We'll create a super chat and pin it in a separate column for me so it guarantees that it makes it on the show tonight. For those of you who have not signed up to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, please make sure to do that. It is ofbnews.com. That's ofbnews.com to subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, or you can click the description in the link in the description of the video. If you want Big 12 news straight to your inbox multiple times per week, cutting out all the Big 10 and SEC crap, just what matters to you and the teams you care about in the Big 12, ofbnews.com in order to sign up for that. Remember our good old friend John Canzano. He said after he lost that big old war between the Big 12 and the Pac-12, and after pushing, the Baghdad Bob sort of lines from everybody inside the Pac-12 on like the Kirk Schultz side of things, hey, it's fine, it's fine, we're going to be fine. He lost the battle, and 4 teams from the Pac-12 joined the Big 12. Now, that was a tough blow for John and his beloved Pac-12 conference, but he did make sure to continue to get some shots off, and he declared, I remember, that Colorado and Utah were going to have much more success, basically be able to come in and run the Big 12. Now, he was half right. Colorado is on its way right now to running the Big 12. He missed on Utah, but he really just meant to say Arizona State. And as bad as that sounds, the Pac-12 essentially coming in here and running the Big 12, as bad as that sounds, it actually can be a very good thing for the league. If you get one particular outcome, it can be a very, very good thing for the league, and even a long-term good thing for the league if you don't believe in Coach Prime sticking around for a long time at Colorado. So let me explain here, but it does seem like at this point, and I tweeted this at the end of the day on Saturday, like it kind of feels like we may get Arizona State, Colorado for the Big 12 championship game, which would very much be the Pac-12 takeover. Got the team that was picked last in the Big 12, Arizona State, with the coach that was picked by CBS Sports as the worst coach in the Big 12 conference, which is crazy. But worst coach in the Big 12 conference, Kenny Dillingham, taking his team from 3 wins last year to 9 or 10 wins in a Big 12 championship game appearance. That could happen. That is a very legitimate possibility. More on Arizona State in just a moment. But schedule or not, because I've gotten that pushback a lot on this Colorado take over the last week, but Colorado definitely feels like they are the best team in the league right now. We just discussed BYU trending downward. We have danger always in playing the score comparison or just, game comparison thing in college athletics based on a one-off game. But we have a really recent data point on the 2 offenses against the Utah defense, which went into the game in Boulder this past Saturday as the number 1 defense in the league. Colorado scored 42 offensive points. BYU scored 15 offensive points against Utah 2 weeks ago. You have both of those teams with a special teams touchdown included in that. So 42 and 15. Quite a difference. And look, is BYU's defense better than Colorado's defense? Yes, I think it is, but it's not a crazy wide gap. It's not that gap, 42 to 15. I'm no math major on what percentage gap that is, but it's not that. Like Colorado has a top half of the league defense. I think that's kind of where it's come to rest. Like they're not elite. They're not the best in the league, but they are certainly above average. above average to good, depending on the day, and a top half of the league defense. And when you pair that with arguably the best offense in the league, well, I would say the best offense in the league and one of the better offenses in the country, definitely one of the best passing offenses in the country, that's what you need. That's what you need to be really successful. It doesn't take a super elite defense. So what we're seeing from Colorado right now is a team that continues to get better, show me things that we hadn't really seen from them, right? Like 2 weeks ago in Lubbock, them getting punched in the mouth early on, much like they did at Nebraska. And then in a hostile environment where it seems like it's affecting them, they calmly go about their business and figure out a way to win pretty comfortably instead of getting taken behind the woodshed by a Nebraska team that turns out now actually is not very good, may miss a bowl. They're sitting here needing to win one of the last 2 games against Iowa or Wisconsin to actually go to a bowl game. So looking at that result now, it really is jarring. Like, okay, Colorado played a very similar to probably better Texas Tech team on the road in Lubbock in a similar kind of environment. And they got to turn around and won this time, which displays really the growth of this team. It feels like they are getting better. When you watch them, it feels to me like they are getting better. The counter to that is, all right, well, Colorado missed BYU, Iowa State, and Arizona State on the schedule this year. So, arguably the top 3 toughest contenders outside of them in the league, they missed all of them. So how can you really be so sure? I got so much feedback from people about that. How can you be so sure when they have not played the best in the league? And their best win, you would argue, probably Texas Tech, maybe Baylor. But Texas Tech being on the road and being a wider margin, not taking the Hail Mary, you would probably say that Texas Tech is the best win. That's not going to hold up to, for instance, what BYU's best wins are this year. But if you're using your eyes to just watch the 2 teams right now and the way that they're playing at this point in the season, I think it's hard to argue that Colorado doesn't seem like the best team. If you were to put them on a neutral field, I would certainly imagine that Colorado would wind up being the favorite in that game. And I would favor them to win that game right now if they were to tee it up in Arlington. Doesn't mean that it can't happen for BYU, but for right now, I really, truly feel like that's where things stand. And some of it too, just the BYU offense, man, they've only scored 28 points the last 2 weeks. Retzloff, I've always had some questions about. I think he's done an admirable job this year and been so much better than anybody thought he would be, but he's got a pretty limited ceiling. And when you're Colorado and you have the level of athlete and talent that they have all over the place, they just have so much higher of a ceiling, and it feels like they're really ascending to that. Whereas BYU probably had a higher floor than Colorado coming into the year, but they definitely have a more limited ceiling, and they got some breaks. They caught some breaks and got lucky in a couple of situations against inferior teams already. That now seems to be running out. Colorado got a Hail Mary. They definitely got a break too at one point along the way in their season, but they seem to have really built on that and are pushing forward right now. On the other half of this is Kenny Dillingham and Arizona State. And look, he just whooped my team, man. Saw it happen in person. He drilled K-State, got up 24-0 before it got a little bit closer, but that really was not indicative of how in control Arizona State was of that game the entire way. He's got infectious energy. I just admire the job he has done for the mess that he took over, like what Herm Edwards had done to that program, not just losing games. And, they took over a 3-win program, but NCAA sanctions, self-imposed sanctions, I guess, that were put on the program because of everything that was going on there. And all he did was come in and without an expensive roster, without a bunch of crazy NIL money to spend, punk K-State in their own house to get to 8-2 in the league right now and be in position to actually make a Big 12 championship game here in year one. A guy who, again, was literally picked by CBS and their panel when they did the top coaches in the Big 12. He was picked last. Coach Prime, by the way, was picked 15th. And now we're sitting here talking about both of these guys here in a Pac-12 takeover of the Big 12. Dillingham turned over 94% of the roster from the one that he inherited 2 years ago. So this has been all him and his coordinators too. I mean, like Marcus Arroyo, I think has done a tremendous job as the offensive coordinator this year and came out of nowhere. Last year, they really had to take some lumps in what was a very good Pac-12. In the final year of the Pac-12, they go 3-9. And now, I mean, it looks to me like they're likely to finish 9-3 or 10-2. I would certainly bet on that as opposed to 8-4 and losing the last 2 games here. This is a guy that should be, and Kenny Dillingham should be a National Coach of the Year candidate behind Curt Cignetti. You know, I mean, Curt Cignetti is probably going to win it, I would have to imagine. But boy, along with Coach Prime, Kenny Dillingham should definitely be there. He should definitely be there. He's going to get a contract extension and a raise, I'm sure, because Curt Cignetti just got a huge one to where that dude's going to be making $8 million a year. So Dillingham's going to be really highly sought after. And I honestly feel like they're like shades of Dan Lanning to Kenny Dillingham. He did coach with him for a year at Oregon before being hired by Arizona State, but he's in that mold. Like the thing that I also really like about Dillingham, and Coach Prime kind of fits this too, like their vibes are just what you want in a new school head coach. Like how many coaches across the country right now are entering a phase where they're like, man, I don't really like this. This is a basketball example, but like, for instance, Tony Bennett at Virginia, like, this isn't what I signed up for. I don't like handling the NIL. I don't like handling the transfer portal. I don't have the energy to do all this stuff. You've got kind of your older generation of coaches that are not, this is not what they really want or like. It's not natural to them. Kenny Dillingham was born in the 90s. I read that today. Kenny Dillingham was born in the 90s. He is basically my age. I was born in 89. In fact, I'm slightly older than Kenny Dillingham. That's a guy that can handle this new era of college football. That's a guy that can handle this new era of college football. And he is at his alma mater. So that opens up another layer to this conversation, which is Arizona State may have hit a grand slam here. I mean, we'll see. I'm sure Dillingham is going to be pursued by people, but being that he is an alum, you've got a chance to hold on to him and make him be a long-term thing here. The Big 12 has done a great job with that. Matt Campbell, Chris Kleiman, Lance Leipold, a lot of these coaches that have been highly sought after and mentioned for a ton of jobs, they've stuck around. So if Arizona State is going to pony up and provide the resources necessary there, that can definitely be something that is a long-term marriage here and raises the question, should we be talking now about Arizona State? You know, I mean, everybody has the conversation. Who's going to run the Big 12? Who will be the school that does it? If there is somebody, I'd actually argue that this year has probably shown us that the most likely scenario is that there won't be anybody that really takes that mantle and runs with it. It'll be all over the place. But Arizona State might be that school, man. I mean, that's always been a place that seems sort of like a sleeping giant, but couldn't get out of its own way. And now you've got this guy who seems like the perfect archetype of the coach that you would want in 2024 for the NIL portal era. He's got a bunch of wind behind his sails now, doing this with Cam Scadaboo, transfer from Sacramento State, Sam Levitt, who was the guy, he was, you know, not Jaden Rashada, the guy that everybody was all hyped up about, the big high-profile recruit that they brought in. No, they've turned Sam Levitt into one of, if not the best quarterback from that class. And then they've got Jordan Tyson, who's, you know, Chris Kleiman called him the best receiver he's seen all year. Rightfully so. He just killed K-State. So he's put together this like trio that's incredible on offense. Again, without a whole lot of NIL money to really work with. I don't know. I think this could take off. I see Drew saying, quit overreacting because they beat our Cats. I would tell you, I think I've probably underreacted to Kenny Dillingham throughout the season. And this has just been something that jostled me to attention about Dillingham, because I've talked about Dillingham throughout the year, but not a ton. It was almost a little bit more like, hey, like this is kind of a cute little story. Like Arizona State is jumping up and having a nice season, but they continue to win and win. And then they won a game. I know it's UCF who's not having a great year, but they win a game without their starting quarterback, or rather without Cam Scadaboo. They had to play a game earlier without Sam Levitt at quarterback, which they lost. But they won a game without Scadaboo, who is clearly their best player and one of the best players in the conference. I think there's a lot that you're seeing there. And Drew, I would just say, I don't think you have a full grasp on like what was inherited here by Dillingham at Arizona State, a 3-win program under NCAA sanctions without appropriate NIL resources, and the guy's 8-2 right now and might make the Big 12 championship game. I guess we'll see. Maybe they get smacked by BYU, and if they finish out the year with a loss and go 8-4, take some of the shine off it. It certainly could. But even then, you're talking about a guy who just jumped from 3 wins to 8 wins this year and is, once again, cut from the perfect cloth of what you want a coach to be in this day and age. There was a really good article. Oh, do I still have it pulled up? I want to make sure that I give him proper credit because it was a great column from Chris Cartman, who is the publisher at Sun Devil Source, the 24/7 site for Arizona State. Really good article putting into perspective what Kenny Dillingham took over. So I've got immense respect. I think it definitely deserves conversation here. And I think Arizona State can definitely be one of the teams that's in contention year in, year out if he is going to stick around. Now, having said all of this, I know for like Hateful Eight fans, it can be like, all right, isn't this kind of just playing into the narrative that, the Big 12 wasn't that good. It sucks that you got 2 Pac-12 teams coming in and taking over. Well, I mean, first of all, I would say Arizona and Utah have really, really struggled. So it's not like it has been perfect. But also, look, man, if it is Coach Prime that gets to the playoff and it's Colorado that gets to the playoff and Travis Hunter wins the Heisman, I mean, say what you will about how long he will stick around, but that's extra attention on the league that you would not have generated from anybody else. That will create a lot of people, a lot of casuals paying attention to something that is from the Big 12. I think that will have a lot of benefits for the conference, regardless really of what happens to them actually in the playoff. There are a lot of ancillary benefits that can come from you just getting the pub of Coach Prime and his team going the way that it appears that they are going right now, if he is the guy that makes the playoff. So I think there is a scenario where it does actually turn out to be still a pretty good thing for the league. Might not be exactly what everybody wants, but here in year one, I think it could be a great thing. And also Julian Lewis, the USC quarterback who everyone speculated about might be flipping to Colorado, has decommitted from USC. So, if you're thinking about Coach Prime in the future and what it looks like after that, they may have their quarterback of the future. They may have the next guy, and I'm sure it's not going to be hard to go find somebody in the portal if they want to do that after what has happened this year. So we'll see how Coach Prime can parlay all that. But if you can get past, worrying about what people said about the league beforehand and are you going to be okay if this is an all Pac-12, Big 12 championship game? If you can get past that, and if it is Colorado that advances on, I think that will still benefit the league quite a bit, even if it's not going to be two-bid Big 12 league and run by, Oklahoma State, K-State, or Iowa State, like maybe the Hateful Eight would have thought before the beginning of the year. Okay, I think I am behind. I'm behind one super chat here. Lance, what's going on, Lance? Appreciate you being here, Lance. Lance says, OSU fans are just sitting back and laughing at the chaos. Can we just forfeit our last 2 games so I don't have to go to Stilly next week or ruin my Thanksgiving weekend? Well, I know it's Colorado at the end. Who does Oklahoma State have this week? Oklahoma State has got Texas Tech. Okay, hosting Texas Tech and then at Colorado. I can understand the feeling, Lance. This is definitely one of those times where you wish you were playing NCAA so that you could just sim to the end of the season. This would be exactly where, okay, just sim to the end of the season, get to the off season, which I don't know. Is it going to be an eventful off season in Stillwater? We shall see. We shall see. I will be very interested to see how that all plays out and what's going to happen there. But I get it, man. I get it. I feel for you. I will, this is just water, but pour one out for you. I know that's not technically pouring one out, but I'll pour one out for you later, Lance, in what's been a rough year. I know it's been a rough year, but thank you for your support of the channel. And thank you for being here as always. If you want to be like Lance, you got about 10 minutes or so here to get one in before the end of the show. Click the $ sign below the chat box in order to do that. And you can also contribute on Venmo, John-Kurtz-4 if you're not watching live. and get your question or comment in. I will read it to kick off the next show. John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo. So you can always be a part of the conversation, even if you are not here live. One more plug here for the Big 12 newsletter, open for business. Go to ofbnews.com to subscribe if you want Big 12 news straight to your inbox without Big 10 or SEC crap. You just want Big 12 news, how it affects the Big 12 and what you care about. ofbnews.com to get subscribed, or click the link in the description of this video. Very easy. Very, very easy to do that. So I realized, first of all, let me tell you that I saw a comment come by and I forgot to include one of the things I definitely wanted to include in the show today. It involves some audio, and I'm going to need to get that actually like queued up. So I'm going to try and do that Wednesday. I'm going to go ahead and put that on my outline for Wednesday so I won't forget. But that is all about one Desmond Howard. I've got a little something for Desmond Howard and his Big 12 disrespect. But for now, pretty important Big 12 TV update that's easy to fly under the radar because of everything that we're thinking about right now. Like what we've been talking about this entire show. Big 12 going to be able to get an auto buy? Is there a scenario where they might not get somebody in? Is Big 12 going to get somebody in front of Boise? All this conversation can drown out a headline like this, which I'm reading from an On3 story here that says, as the college football playoff expands this year, ESPN will sublicense first-round games to TNT Sports as a part of a 5-year agreement. That partnership is now expanding after the Warner Brothers Discovery settlement with the NBA. But here's the key. The next line in this, ESPN landed a deal to sublicense Big 12 football games and basketball games to Warner Brothers Discovery. This is according to the Wall Street Journal. Games would air on TNT as well as on Max. An announcement is expected early next week. So what you have here is ESPN giving some of its TV inventory, Big 12 games, saying, hey, TNT, you can air some of these Big 12 games. We will allow you to do that. And the trade is that ESPN gets the rights to Inside the NBA, which obviously is the iconic NBA pregame show. Shaq, Charles Barkley, Kenny, Ernie, the whole gang. So I'm sure that is a huge feather in the cap here for ESPN. It was interesting, though. I saw Bob Thompson, the former head of Fox Sports Network, who's been on the channel here. You guys know, he was saying like, hey, I actually don't really understand this from ESPN. He made it seem like he would rather have the live inventory than just the Inside the NBA show. Regardless of whether or not it makes sense for ESPN, what it definitely makes sense for, I think, is the Big 12. I like this for a number of reasons. I've got to give a shout out to, and I'll show you one of his tweets here in just a moment, Rick Jr. on Twitter, who had a really good thread about all of this and what it means for the league, and just a thread about the general landscape of the Big 12 and its TV rights and where all that's going to go. But I would say, first and foremost, you got to be thinking here, well, one, and I know I saw Keep Chopping Wood say better than ESPN Plus. Well, TNT certainly is. And I mean, I would think that Max is probably going to be too. If you're just thinking about like broadcast quality, I would imagine TNT is going to do a great job with this. They're now going to be looking for inventory to replace what they had with the NBA. And they have done the NBA, they've done the NCAA tournament, and they are high quality broadcasts. I mean, you're not going to be getting like, Jim Nantz treatment from the NCAA tournament or anything, but I think it will be, in all likelihood, higher quality than, yes, a lot of inventory that would have otherwise been on ESPN Plus. Would definitely take that. But beyond that, how about just starting a relationship here? Starting a relationship with a new media entity. How often have we talked about on this channel in the offseason about the Big 12 decoupling football and basketball rights? Meaning, when it comes up in 2031, they sell the football package as one thing, they sell the basketball package as another, whereas right now they're combined together. The idea being, the theory, the hope, that you could get more money that way. You would wind up getting more money out of your TV package by splitting them up and selling them separately. Well, if you're going to do that, it would seem to be, if you're linking up now with an entity that just lost a bunch of NBA inventory that's looking for a replacement there, and you've got the best basketball product in the country. I'm focusing most of this on basketball. Football would be a part of this too, but you've got the best basketball product in the country to give them and start a relationship in a year where, you've got a league with more teams in the AP top 10 than any league has ever had. You're just going to have so much good inventory potentially to be distributing to them. This could start to be a really fruitful relationship and just get in the door. It was like when I was coming out of school, everybody was just like, do an internship, just get your foot in the door, start building a relationship there with somebody. That could lead to really big things. That's kind of what this feels like a little internship for Big 12 programming to be linked up with TNT here. And maybe that turns them into a legitimate, really big bidder in 2031 when you're trying to split the rights there. And that can definitely help. Whether or not they're even the ones who ultimately get them, if they're just going to be involved, having another bidder obviously will help. Driving up the price, whatever it's going to be. So I love that. I love being able to lay some groundwork there while giving, in all likelihood, a better product to anybody who is going to be watching. I would have to assume, because I try to not be the hating on ESPN Plus guy, because I just see so much of it. It feels kind of lazy, but it is frustrating. Like sometimes ESPN Plus will have, buffering issues, like quality issues. Some of the football games this year, it's like, why can we not have a first down line? I mean, there have been plenty of problems over the years with ESPN Plus, so it can be a frustrating product for sure. I try to not go over the top with that because a lot of people complain about it. And I hear people complain about the price and having to pay for it. I'm like, it's really not very, it's like the price of a coffee, one trip to Starbucks for the month, and you've got ESPN Plus, and really being able to watch all the baseball games and stuff, it can be great. I digress. This, I think, would be a win in a lot of different respects. But there's also, and Rick Jr. made this point, there's also this element of now diversifying a little bit. You're not going to be totally dependent on ESPN if you now have this partner in the bag. That can also be something that is very, very beneficial. So just diversification of where your games are going to be shown. If you want the biggest paycheck, our recent history would suggest that is the way to do it, because the Big Ten, although they are complaining about it right now because of having to play their big games at noon, the Big Ten did that by getting 3 or 4 networks involved in their latest TV deal with Kevin Warren, and they got a massive $8 billion deal. Now, it turned out that they don't really love all the consequences of that, but if you're trying to get as much money as possible, it does obviously seem to be better to have more involved than just one. So the Big Ten is a recent example of that. I also thought it was really interesting. Rick Jr. laid out how much of a benefit the mountain time zone schools are right now with all of this. So this is long. I would highly encourage, if you are interested in this, definitely go check out Rick Jr.'s Twitter thread on this, which there's a bunch there. But he just talks about how much leverage the mountain time zone schools really give the Big 12 when it comes to ESPN or whoever, but particularly ESPN right now, because they want, certainly, but really need the late night time slot. And the Big 12 gives a lot of really quality content there. Like, for instance, what did we just watch last night? BYU, Kansas. You got an unbeaten Big 12 team going right down to the wire in a really close game. Week before that, you had the Holy War and all the drama of all that coming. You can really throw some high quality content out there. Colorado's been in that slot. And ESPN, if they didn't have that, they'd be talking all right, what can we do with Stanford and Cal, which, nobody cares. They don't have big fan bases. That's not going to be a way to draw any sort of decent number in the late night window. So that is something that really helps. Anyway, a lot of good insight here in this thread. I would definitely suggest checking that out. I'm going to go in reverse order here real quick because I did see this from our web. So our web says, John, remember TNT will have the Big 12 and Big East college basketball, and TNT will simulcast on Max like CBS and Paramount. Opens the door to B is bifurcating. Divided into two branches. Okay, so we're speaking the same language there about splitting those two, right? Splitting basketball, decoupling a synonym there for bifurcating. It's where it's going to show that I've just got a communications degree from a state school, R-Web. But no, I appreciate it there. Or I appreciate your insight there. And R-Web is the one, by the way, that did alert me to this. I hadn't even seen the headline when I said at the beginning of this video, hey, it can be easy to have this one just pass you by in the middle of football season with all the bullets flying. I would have missed it if not for R-Web. So I definitely appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, you are definitely right. I think there are a lot of benefits across the board here for everybody involved. Sans maybe ESPN. I don't know, but I guess ESPN feels like they are benefiting from the inside the NBA part of this. So could be very, very good. Could be very, very good. Baron, what's up, Baron? Baron says, are Big 12 versus SEC bowl games possible? Dude, I got to be honest. The bowl tie-ins at this point with the playoff this year, I really have not even paid attention to what that is anymore. I'm bringing it up here. So you've got, these aren't going to give me the tie-ins though. It's not going to give me the tie-ins. Pop-Tart, Texas, Alamo, First Responder, Liberty. God, the Liberty Bowl. That will be my luck. K-State gets sent out to the Liberty Bowl again for all the bleep that I've talked about the actual stadium there. The Armed Forces Bowl. Looks like it's just a rate bowl, no longer the guaranteed rate bowl, just a rate bowl. Liberty Bowl at times in the past has been an SEC opponent. Texas Bowl, that was SEC last year, right? That was Oklahoma State, Texas A&M. So I guess to answer your question, yes, I do think that is possible. If anybody has more insight on the bowl tie-ins, definitely let me know in the comments. But part of the problem here, I guess I'm, maybe a part of the problem that I would talk about all the time. But with the playoff, I'm like, I just have not paid much attention to the bowl games anymore because the problem is, this may not be the reason you're asking that question, but I feel like the reason that question would be asked is like, hey, does the Big 12 have a chance to get one over on the SEC in bowl season? It won't matter. It won't matter. Won't move the needle at all. Won't do anything. The way that the Big 12 moves the needle is by beating an SEC team in the playoff. That would be it. Trevor's insight. Okay, Justin, thank you. Back to back here. Trevor apparently is with me on the Liberty Bowl. The Liberty Bowl people were very nice. I want to stress that the people with the bowl were very, very nice. I had no issues with that. But the weather was not good and the stadium was not good at all. The two times that I was there. And one time my press box seat was literally like obstructed view. It was like literally like there was a big pole right in my line of sight. So I was having to like do this, So that's it. Okay. So yeah, Barron says that's why he was asking. All right. I figured, Barron. The unfortunate reality of that is that, well, as Justin says, Big 12 tie-ins against the SEC would be the Texas Bowl and the Liberty Bowl. All right. So I had him nailed. Look at that. I wasn't confident in it, but apparently I knew what I was talking about. Thank you, Justin. But yeah, Barron, I don't know that it'll matter much. It'll be great. Maybe it makes Big 12 fans just feel a little bit better. But bowl games now, a part of the problem is just that bowl games now, like, dude, who knows what those rosters are going to be like? Like, players opting out and the portal open and teams disappointed that they didn't make the playoff. It's even more inconsistent than what it was before in terms of like what kind of product you're going to get in the actual bowl games. But hey, be great if the Big 12 can beat the SEC. It certainly wouldn't hurt. I certainly would have fun, and it could definitely make for some fun trolling. All right, Desmond Howard survives today because I did not remember to get all that prepped and ready for you. So we'll see if we can get some Desmond Howard action in here on Wednesday. Other than that, thank you guys all for being here. Please make sure to like the video, subscribe. Okay. Actually, let me say this to everybody who's here right now. check that you're subscribed to the channel. If you are not subscribed, I would really appreciate it if you did, because I looked the other day, and of the past month, 75% of the traffic here and people watching the channel are not subscribed. That is crazy. Even if you think you are subscribed, please make sure you subscribe to the channel, because that really helps me, helps more people find the content. Be amazing if you could do that. And I was blown away by that number. I've seen it more like 50-50 before, but 75% of you not subscribed who are watching here. Okay. Also, Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. If you want Big 12 news without SEC or Big 10 bias or anything that doesn't matter to the Big 12, you want to filter down to what matters to Big 12 fans, go to ofbnews.com to subscribe to my Open for Business Big 12 newsletter. That's ofbnews.com. Or just click the link in the description of this video. Very easy way to do that as well. Appreciate all of you guys. Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Please pray for me, my friends. K-State basketball, terrible loss on Thursday. K-State football, terrible loss on Saturday. And the Chiefs pick up their first loss of the season today. Not a good sports week for your boy, okay? Not a good sports week for your boy. I'll survive, though. I think I'll survive and probably talk to you on Wednesday. Take care.